What is up, you beautiful happy hustlers out there? Kerry Jack here, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. And in this special episode of the Happy Hustle Podcast, we have on Miss Johanna White, who is an award-winning graphic design and visual branding strategist who designs premium brand identities that create impactful first impressions. And as the founder of Design by Joe Studio, she believes that if someone is the best at what they do, they deserve to look like they do. And for the past decade, she's worked with individuals, startups, and Fortune 200 brands worldwide to help them brand like the best so they can attract more of their ideal clients and be as delightfully expensive as they deserve to be, which I love. And in this episode, we talk all about branding. We talk all about charging what you're worth. We talk about Johanna's just inspiring story of happy hustling, her dream reality, and so much more. You guys are going to love her vibe. Now, after a quick episode sponsor break, where you're going to be diving right in. Real quick, guys, I just want to give a massive shout out to Magnesium Breakthrough, who is making my favorite Magnesium Breakthrough product. It is a supplement that helps optimize sleep, reduces cortisol levels. It really does wonders. If you guys are looking to optimize your sleep and well-being, check them out at magbreakthrough.com/happy hustle to save yourself some money. Now, let's dive in back to this episode. All right, Johanna, welcome to the Happy Hustle Podcast. I am super excited to connect.
Hi there. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. I'm excited. We connected through Brand Builders Group community, an amazing community we're both a part of. And, we just hit it off, and I definitely wanted to share your expertise of branding with the Happy Hustlers, because I think branding is one of the most important aspects of a business. And I think a lot of people overlook the importance necessary to really get your brand to a place that reflects who you are. So I'm excited to talk about that stuff and really, pull back the curtain for the Happy Hustlers. But before we do, Johanna, I want to make sure I say it right. Johanna, what is something interesting about yourself that not too many people know?
Well, since I'm pretty new to your audience, I could make up any number of things, but let's go with I do acrobatic yoga. It's very fun. And I love it so much that in addition to Design by Joe, I also have an online clothing store where I sell yoga pants made out of recycled water bottles. That's something not a lot of people know about me.
I didn't know that either. That's super cool. And I really like the recycled water bottle component. My brother and I, we have a company called Eco Breakthroughs. He runs point on it. It's his baby, but we're upcycling plastic waste as well. And that's super cool. Where can people go to get some of these yoga pants? I mean, do you make guy yoga pants? That's the real question.
Oh, that question has been eating at me for the last few years. It's going to be coming, but it's uniquelyyoga.com. And pretty much for women, although there have been some men that stuck in and said, dang it, I don't care. I want them anyway. I deserve to look amazing too.
Right on. Hey, more power to them.
So we're not going to discriminate if they decide to buy them anyhow.
Yep. I heard that. Well, really cool that you're, did I lose you? Oh,
no,
okay.
I'm
You're still recording.
Still
All right.
recording.
You're still there. Okay. So I'm really excited to dive in and talk about your expertise. And, before we really get into the nitty gritty, I always like to kick things off with a bang. What is the biggest mistake that you see in branding yourself?
Ooh, that's a really fun question. I would say that the biggest mistake is in not branding yourself. It's actually that many people think it's too soon, whether they're just starting their business or whether they're building a personal reputation. And they think it's too soon for me. It's too expensive. I'll get to it later. Eventually I will. And the thing about branding is you are either doing it and creating perception intentionally, or it is being done to you by by the people who know you, by the interactions you have, by the customers you may be beginning to get. So I would say the biggest mistake is actually thinking that you cannot do it. That's not a choice. It's happening.
Yeah.
And either you're doing it on purpose or it's happening and you are at the mercy of what people choose to perceive about you.
That's a really good point. I mean, I think a lot of people, they read their own story rather than write it in cliche terms. And I really believe that you have to create the digitization of your reputation, right? Like Brand Builders Group talks about, where you have to really be deliberate with your brand and who you are and what you stand for. And, everything from your company colors to your logo to your font all plays into that visual identity. Talk to us about cultivating your visual identity. What goes into it? When I know you've worked with some of the biggest clients out there, and you're not cheap. Let's put it this way. So, some of your websites are six figures and above. Your packages. Talk to us about that process of cultivating a brand and a visual identity.
Yeah, gladly. So I would say first that it's important to remember that the visual part of your brand is just that. It's just part of it. It is half of a coin, and the other half are the words that you use to talk about it. So actually, when I go to create a visual identity, which may include anything from a visual identity may include anything from what you mentioned, logos, color palettes, although those are usually somewhere in the middle. It might also include personal branding photos because the person is one of their own brand touch points. And then the visual may include the website. But before we do any of what you would call visual branding, we actually focus on the message. And that is really getting to the core of what it is that they offer that has extreme value. So first, before we touch a single thing that looks like an image, we work on helping them to know their value. Because if they don't know it, if they don't know what they do better than anyone, why they're doing it, what problem they're solving, then we can't create any imagery to highlight that. So first we know it and then we show it. And I like to tell my clients that if you can't say it about yourself and then show it about yourself, you can't expect your customers to know it about yourself. So proper English, not so much, but but they remember it. And so first we start with saying it, and then we take that and we craft it into a clarified brand message that they can begin to use over and over when they talk about themselves to people. Maybe their bio, like the one that you read for me here today, is consistent. Anywhere I go, someone will read that bio. The messaging we then wireframe through their website before and single image is looked at. We say, what is the story that's going to draw your customers in to knowing that you are here to solve their problem? And clarify that down, get it really consistent so that no matter where you go, who you're talking to, or where you're showing up, you're saying the same thing about you. And then we craft the visuals around it. So messaging, knowing first, and then showing. And we do both.
Yeah, it's a really great point. Just knowing first, then showing. I think people, they rush to get their offer out there to monetize oftentimes before they're crystal clear on, their brand DNA, quote unquote, right? And, what that all entails. Some really good questions that I know you're familiar with from Brand Builders Group, since we're talking brand building. 3 that kind of are the North Star are: 1, what one word problem do you solve for people? 2, who exactly do you solve that problem for? And then 3, what is your uniqueness and how can you exploit that in the service of others? I think those 3 questions have really helped me in my journey. And I don't know if you can say the same, Joe, but it's definitely something where you have to have the deep introspection. You have to do the due diligence on your brand. And when you have someone like Joe helping you, it's a lot easier, obviously. But you have to do it, right? It's just,
Yeah.
you see people who probably don't spend enough time on it. What would you say is, if you were going to give a piece of advice to the happy hustlers out there listening, and you were going to say, start here. Like if you were going to start it with just like one simple step that they could potentially do on their own to really start to know thyself before trying to show thyself, what would you say that advice would be?
Well, first, I have to slip in there and say, don't let what you just said, it's absolutely true. Don't let it feel intimidating, guys, because it doesn't have to be a long process. It totally exists, but it can be short. And if you're getting help, especially in a few months, you can go from really not even knowing what makes you that special to knowing it and showing it. So it sounded like a lot. That's why I just want to slide that in there.
Yeah.
It can also take years and it's ever evolving, but it's not scary. So what I would say when I tell my clients, start here, is kind of focusing on finding your X factor. Jesse Itzler, the husband of Sarah Blakely, he's got a great story about how he was either going to go into making brownies and selling them, or he was going to go into being a rap star and a recording artist. And those are wildly different. Yeah. And he almost went down the brownie path. And then a wise mentor sat him down and said, Jesse, before you start down here, tell me what makes your brownie different. And he couldn't answer it. Like, he could not say what it would be that was going to give him any special edge in the brownie industry. But when it came to being a recording artist, he already had some potentials lined up with the Knicks to record their intro and some things like that. And that was a space nobody was in. He moved from that to recording intros for a lot of NBA teams. And so he could say what made him different, what made him special, and then he took that path. I would say you got to know what's going to make you special. And it starts with just asking yourself that question. There's a lot of ways I suggest to my clients when we're digging into this to start finding that. I'll ask them questions like, what problem do you solve better than anyone else? Because people don't buy products or services, they buy solutions to their problems. So when it comes to your brand, you're trying to know and then show what problem you solve and tie it to their survival, and then you'll have no trouble selling it, which I'm sure you get into a lot when you're doing sales and those types of things. But identifying what problem you solve and then identifying who you solve it for, whether it's someone you're solving it for now, or if you want to get a little dreamy and say, who would I like to solve it for? That's fine too. But when people ask me about like, how do I charge more? How do I brand like the best so I can be as delightfully expensive as I want to be? It's about knowing the value, it's about showing the value, but also identifying your target audience is half the battle, because to the wrong client, you will always be too expensive. You'll never be the right price. But to the right client who you offer something exactly what they're looking for, you'll be exactly the right price. And it can be any price. There's a market for everything. There's, you worked some in the fashion industry, I believe. I remember a story about carrying a pair of Burberry shoes on a tray or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Back in my prime.
Back in your prime. I've seen some of those.
A lot of Photoshop.
Been there. Branding is all about Photoshop. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But, just if you don't look good in real life, just use Photoshop, guys. Yes. Edit. No, I'm kidding.
But identifying your ideal audience helps you, one, identify what it is they need and how you can solve it. And two, it sets you up for success with charging more, because if you want to charge more, you need the audience who wants to pay more. And there's a whole world out there of people who will pay more just for the significance of being able to own it. Versus if they are looking for, if they're price buying, that may not be your audience if you're wanting to be delightfully expensive. But so find your X factor. It's something you can do tonight. You can sit down with a notebook and start asking yourself, what do I solve? And what do I do that's different? What do I do that my clients repeatedly ask for more of? What do I do that my friends think is weird, but I could just get lost in it for hours and it comes so easy? What is something in my clients' lives that I hear them asking for a lot? Maybe you don't do it yet, but it might be an easy change to choose that I want this to be my X factor and I'm going to pivot my business to include it. So that's another reason why I say the time to start branding is now, because as you dive into the process, you're going to be asked questions and you're going to ask yourself questions that are going to help nudge you in the right direction.
Yeah, some really great wisdom shared there, Joe. I appreciate the depth that you took that question to, because, you said something, I just want to echo it. Business is solving people's problems at a profit, right? That's what it comes down to, like my buddy Wade T. Lightheart says. And it's really important to look at what problem you solve for these people, creating the solution. And also, you said something about price that I thought was very interesting. When you're, looking at who you're serving, the race to the bottom is no fun. If you're just trying to get those price shoppers who just are always looking for the cheapest price, that's not a good, unless you're Walmart, that's not a good business model, in my opinion. It's like, I'd rather solve someone's problem at the best possible, level, and do it for a select group of people at a higher premium price. And you can decide as a happy hustler out there what exactly that person is, or who that person is, and what problem that is. But you have to think about price when it comes to it. Tell us your pricing story, if you would, Joe.
Sure.
I really think it's awesome, like how you rose your prices and how you just kind of learned through, the trenches of, this, less expensive client oftentimes causes more headaches, and then the more expensive clients are oftentimes a joy to work with. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I will. But first, let me just give your listeners the fun tidbit that at this point, anytime my husband raises his prices in his business, he comes home and he says, I pulled a Johanna today, because my prices have, over the last 3 years, rarely stayed the same for more than one client. Every time I realize that that the people who pay attention. You've probably heard that said before.
Oh, yeah.
Every single time that I raised my prices, I got better to work with clients, more fun, more easygoing. The projects were more in line with my vision. So when I started my business 8 years ago, I was total commodity of a graphic designer. I was charging, I think, $40 an hour. The keynote, I was charging hourly. That's not a great place to be. Then you're always looking at the clock, getting stomach aches, like it's not fun. But I was charging very low, and I didn't know my X factor. I didn't know what made me different. And I was not the expert, or I didn't think that I was. I was expecting clients to come to me, tell me what they needed, what they wanted, and I just design monkey it. Sure, I'll make it. I'll make it beautiful. I'll make it as good as anybody else, but I'm just going to make what you say. And then I started looking around and going, well, this is a race to the bottom, to use your words.
Mm-hmm.
I started seeing that there was going to be a cap on what I could charge as long as I was just everybody else. And also that I didn't even like the path to the future that most designers followed. The ones that were a few years ahead of me, I saw them slowly working their way into maybe becoming a small agency, still undercharging, but just taking on more and more and more work, quantity over quality as much as they could. And even if their agency started to become successful, now they were managers instead of designers, and they were doing the work that they didn't like while managing the people who got to do the part of the work that they actually did like and giving most of their profit away in the process. And I looked at that and I went, oh, hell no. That is
Yeah.
not where I want to go, because I am a happy hustler and
Yep.
I am working to design the life that I want. And I looked at it and said, no, I don't see it. And I couldn't, it took me a really long time to even identify. I just knew what I didn't want. So I had some wise advice from some friends, and I know I'm bunny trailing a little. I promise I'm coming back to the pricing journey. It's all
All
part of
good.
it. I had advice from a really good entrepreneur friend who said, if you can't go apply for the job that you want or that does all your skills, sit down, imagine it, dream it, write it out. What does it look like? Then go create it. And so
Mm.
I just kind of sat down and said, I want to be different. I know that much. And then I got dragged to a Tony Robbins conference. That was probably the catalyst in my first major price increase, because while I
Nice.
was at the conference, he reminded me that the businesses that fall in love with their clients instead of with their products or service will be the business that outlasts the competition, that can charge what they want to charge, and will pivot when times change. They won't get left
Mm.
behind because technology changes. They'll be constantly asking their clients, how can I serve you in the way that you want to be served?
Mm.
And then that will go. And I'm sorry to pause, but we just lost video. Am I having
Nope.
issues on your end, Carrie? So I got dragged to this conference, and at that point, I'm like 5 years into my business and had not raised my prices very much in those 5 years, still struggling to make a living and constantly frustrated by the type of work I was doing and the types of clients I was working with. I just say yes to absolutely everything.
Mm.
That is a side effect of undercharging.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if it's a good project or whatever. You got to take it. So I was stuck. I was frustrated. I felt like I'd had all this momentum when I first started my business in 2013, like right after getting diagnosed with a brain tumor. I got this kick in the pants. It's now or never.
Whoa.
That's what made me start the business.
Mm.
And that felt great. But then once I got started, I didn't climb. I just kind of
Mm.
got started and then coasted for 5 years. So that's another story for later or for another day. But I got, so I got dragged to this conference. I get told, start asking your clients how to serve them in the way they want to be served, and you'll be a
Mm-hmm.
business that pivots. And we also did a lot of like dreaming, what's your X factor type of work while we were there. And even though I had been branding my clients, I had not branded myself. And I had no I had no visual brand and no messaging and no clarity. Like, you would ask me then what it is I do, and I'd give you this long-winded explanation that'd go in some circles, and like maybe you'd understand, and you'd be like, so do you design business cards or something? I don't know. And I would only talk about the doing, the work, and not
Mm.
the benefit. So no one knew what it did for them. Just like, oh, maybe she could make me a logo, or could you
Mm.
put this on a mug? I don't know. And so after that pivot, I came back I actually did ask my clients. I sent out emails, I had interviews, and I said, what do you need? What do you wish you had in a relationship with a brand designer? And that was the first time I called myself a brand designer instead of just a graphic designer, because I was starting to get the idea that this was about the big picture, not just about a few of the touch points. And they said, we don't know what we don't know, and we need someone to take us through the journey. We need someone who can do the research on our ideal clients and tell us what they're attracted to. We need someone to tell us what to put on our website because we don't know what it needs to say. And so I kind of backed up and went, they need an expert. That's what they want to pay for. They don't want to just pay for a designer. You can find that on Fiverr. They want to pay for someone who knows where to go next to get their business to the next level. So that was the first pivot point. And as soon as I made that decision that I want to become the brand name in brand design, someday I want the word on the street to be, if you want your business to go from 1 million to 10 million, it needs to stop by Design by Joe.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome.
And that will be the pivot point for you, because we're going to figure these out and we're going to then do it visually so that people can hear it and see it. Because, yeah, words are great, but an image that captures those words that you've crafted, that stops people in their tracks. So I made that pivot, and then I became known in my household as the Quantum Bunny. Like, I just started making price increases, and the second someone said yes to the new price, I said, that's it, never going back. I have evidence that I can do this. And I had a ton of people telling me, you can't charge more for this, you can't do that. And I was like, oh, just watch me. So I took the time. I set aside like 3 months where I didn't take any clients, and I rebranded myself. I dug into my messaging. I did workshops and learned a lot along the way from my clients as well. I did story brand and brand builders and all of those, really diving into finding my X factor. And then I went and I styled and I did photo shoots and I did personal branding shoots, and I totally redid my website so that it told that story of the problem that I solved quickly and with images that just position my brand. I went really literal on this. You can go more simply and as a concept, but brand positioning is associating your business with images that already exist in the mind of the consumer that remind them of the perception you want to have. In my case, it was luxury. So I went all in with the literal, and you'll see like Louboutin heels and Louis Vuitton and Hermes and the dripping gold and like things that the second people see them, their mind makes the connection to something they're already familiar with. And they go, oh, she's going to be expensive. This is great. Or they say, oh, she's going to be expensive. This is not for me. But either way, because a good brand is like a magnet. It's going to attract the ideal and repel what's not. If you're neutral and nobody is repelled by you, you probably don't have a brand. You might not even have an opinion.
Facts.
You're a commodity. You're the same. You look the same as everybody else, and therefore might as well be invisible.
That's really well said. Yeah. I just want to stop there for one sec, Joe, just because that point is really important. You know, if you're not like taking a stand with your brand, if you're not having an opinion, if it's not clear, you know, what you stand for and what your brand is about, well, you might be a commodity. And unfortunately, commodities get crushed by price. And what we're talking about here with Joe is how to position yourself and your brand so that you don't have to worry about price ever again. You know, you can charge what you deserve, and you could be, as Joe says, as delightfully expensive as you want. And I think that's just a really great point, and I wanted to touch on that. Continue, Joe.
Yeah. Well, like I said, then I kind of became the quantum bunny, and my my pricing went from 1 year I was still doing branding packages, including brand guidelines for $5,000. And I was working all the time and delivering this great work that clients were then taking and just sitting on. They hadn't
Mm,
invested enough in the process or in the business finances. And they were like, oh, I'll get to implementing it someday. And it
mm-hmm.
didn't go anywhere. And I got so sick of seeing potential left that I was like, all right, I got to raise my prices. The first raise was because I wanted them to be more all in.
Mm.
And
That's
it
a good
worked. The
point.
first time I went from
Yeah.
5K to 10K for branding package. That client at that level, it was just expensive enough for them that it really pushed them. And they took all of my advice, they implemented it everywhere. And in the first month after we launched their new brand and website, they doubled their revenue with their ideal client alone. In the first month, they doubled their annual revenue
Mm,
because now they looked as good as they were, and their messaging was speaking directly to their ideal client.
mm.
Previously, it had been vague, it had
Yep.
been indecisive, it had been generic. It looked neither bad nor good. It just was. And but now people knew it when they got there. This is for me. Doubled their revenue in the first month. Like that is because they paid a little more and they were all in. And then I was like, okay, well, if I can do that for 10K, what can I do for 20? And 1 month
Mm-hmm.
later, up went the prices again.
There you
And
go.
the next client was even more invested and more involved and more ideal. And
Mm-hmm.
like so excited about the process that they were recommending me to everyone. And then I was like, well, 20, I mean, this is a lot of work and I could do so much more if it was 50. So then came 50 and then came the next like best client ever. And now they're 100K and up. And the thing is, here's another thing that I want to say to your listeners. Some people will hear that and say, I'm ripping someone off. Other people will hear that number and say, I'm still cheap. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen $1 million websites. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
$1 million brands. And
Yep.
I can tell you that what I deliver is of equal quality to those.
Mm.
But to the clients that I'm serving right now, that would be too much. Well, that
Yep.
doesn't mean in a few years I won't be doing the $1 million brands and websites, but your price is expensive to the wrong clients. It's perfect to the right clients. And it needs to feel like a commitment and an investment. Otherwise, they don't show up for the process and they don't get the best out of it. And so when I started realizing that John Acuff, one of my favorite authors, wrote this awesome book called Soundtracks. And in it, one of his new anthems is that winning is contagious. When I help others win, I win too. And I started to just see that happening. Like as it went up, like one of my more recent clients um, can't say enough good things. They asked me, like, can I make a testimonial video for you? Can I refer you? Can I do this? Can I do that? And they don't feel like they paid too much. They feel like I didn't pay enough. I'd have paid double for the value that I
Mm.
just got. Like when you know what you really do, and then you position your brand to meet those clients, then the only thing left to do is always find a way to add more value. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you up your prices and you up your brand, but then you don't live up to it, you're just like smoke and mirrors. That is a facade, and branding is not about creating a facade. That will crumble quickly. But if
Mm.
you take those authentic pieces that you have, you highlight them, you make them stand out, and you show up with it, you can then create this aspirational brand that you are excited to live up to, excited to surpass. That you're looking at your clients going, what else can I do for you? Because I love working with you so much. And again, like this past weekend, I went to Detroit and took my client shopping for her personal brand. And we had an absolute blast spending thousands of dollars as we made our way, from Burberry to Coach to Louis Vuitton, and just like having so much fun. When you get aligned with what you offer and your ideal client, that's the kind of that's my work. That's my job. I just got paid to go help someone spend thousands of dollars at Burberry. Who doesn't love to do that?
Well, I don't, but that's
You
good
don't?
for you.
All right. There's lots of people that hate shopping, and that's why I have a job.
But I do totally know what you're saying, because I feel like that when I'm in the wilderness with a bunch of badass entrepreneurs and I'm taking them camping and I'm getting paid for it. So, for my Montana mastermind. So I totally hear you. When you work in alignment and you're doing something you love, it doesn't feel like work, and it is so impactful for both, yourself and the person you're serving. So I love that. And you just continue to drop a ton of value there in terms of just getting crystal clear on, your brand and the importance of it and charging what you're worth. I mean, there's been so much, gold here, Joe. I do want to just touch on, I know you had some serious adversity with your brain tumor. Give us a quick backstory with this, and maybe anyone out there who is overcoming adversity, a quick message for them.
Yeah. Yes, I will gladly do that. And also, because that backstory really highlights what I would say is one of my biggest brand messages now, that I will state again at the end, but it is what you believe matters, but what you do about what you believe matters even more. That's what moves the needle. That's what attracts the client. Like, you can believe you're worth it, but if you don't do something about branding yourself and showing it, you'll just be frustrated knowing you're worth more and not doing it. But I learned that lesson years ago in 2013. I was like healthiest person ever, stronger than the average woman, always fit, always working out, could open any jar.
Oh, any jar, even
strong.
The pickle jar.
Any jar, even the pickle jar. My grip strength was like 10 pounds stronger than the average man, 40 pounds stronger than the average woman. Like, my identity was in being strong. And then out of nowhere, I woke up with an insane migraine, which I'd never had before. Felt like a pickaxe through my skull, lasted for 3 days. And when it went away, I was left with paralysis on my left side.
Wow.
These muscles were all atrophied, the sternocleidomastoid, the muscle behind your collarbone. My vocal cords were paralyzed on the left side, and the soft palate function was messed up. So basically, I tried to swallow food or water, and it came out of my nose instead of going down my throat.
Oh, wow.
So and at this time, I was actually still working at a creative agency, utterly miserable, utterly stressed about life. I was even more of a commodity than when I was on my own, but charging $40 an hour. Like, that was a little better. But I was earning peanuts. I was kept at 30 hours a week so that they didn't have to give me benefits. And it was this sky is always falling type of environment where everyone would just tell you, you're just lucky to have a job. At least you're working in your degree. Like, you just need to be thankful. And constantly they were not going anywhere with their life, and they didn't want to see you go either. And so while I was there, this happened, and I'm not a person who rushes to the ER. In fact, this is the only time I've ever been to the ER, and I still waited like 10 days of choking and barely breathing, and I dropped a bunch of weight, and my parents were like, we're going to the ER.
Yeah.
There's something majorly wrong here.
Jeez.
And they actually told me I was imagining it. So take a nugget from that. They did a single x-ray, said there's nothing caught in your throat, therefore you're imagining this, and tried to kind of like convince me of nothing. That will happen a lot in your business, whether it's for something good or for something bad. People will tell you, nope, you're imagining it. You're imagining that this ideal client exists, or you're imagining that your life would be better if you did this, but actually you just need to accept your life as it is right now. You're fine. You're not choking and dying. You're fine.
Well, and then let me just stop there. real quick, you said something. That's where a lot of people get stuck and they settle, where they just take like what people tell them is what it is, life's hard, blah, 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 and so I just think it's really important to, extract that point of push past that fear and create your own destiny. Go ahead.
Yep. Which is exactly what got me here today. So I finally ended up at like an ear, nose, and throat, and then a neurosurgeon. They did CAT scans. They called me at like 8:00 at night, so it's not going to be good. And they say, we found a mass. And from that point on, the next 3 years was just a roller coaster of uncertainty. Everything you would ask, the answer would be, I don't know. The results are inconclusive. Like when the doctor called me, I asked them, what does this mean? What is it? We don't know. There's so many tumors out there. We don't know. We know it's wrapped around your 9th and 10th cranial nerve, which is why it's causing these things. But we don't know if it's malignant. We don't know if it's benign. We don't know anything. The results are inconclusive. They did a brain biopsy to try to see if it was cancerous or not, and the results were inconclusive. $10,000 later.
Oh, geez.
And that began a journey where every 6 months I'd go to another surgeon who'd say they think they could help me. They'd do another scan. They'd tell me it's the same size or maybe it's bigger. It would scare the pants off of me, but they'd say, but I can't help you. Go to this next guy. And I finally realized that I had to do something about what I believed because I was not going to get any help. And I was very tempted to take the doctor's word as the last word, which was, you're going to die soon. Here's all these other symptoms that are about to happen to you, by the way. So every time I'd go to an appointment, I'd leave feeling worse because they'd tell me all of the next symptoms. And it ended with me being signed up for surgery on the operating table. The surgeon came in and the anesthesiologist is right there. And the surgeon comes in and says, I changed my mind. I'm not actually going to do this surgery. I took another look at your charts and I thought the risks were minimal, but actually I could put you in a wheelchair or in a feeding tube for life. And he basically ended my journey with doctors and brain tumor. This is like 2.5 years in. And I've just been hanging on this thread of hope that a doctor can help me. And I love doctors. I have lots of friends that are doctors. I wholeheartedly believe that they do amazing things. But in this case, I was hanging all of my outcomes on them and on what they said. And I was taking their word as the last word. And what I needed to do, and then what I finally did, was say, I have faith, for one. I believe in healing. I've said my whole life that I believe in God and that I believe in healing, but I'm not doing anything about that other than maybe, praying a little, God, please help. And I had a friend who was a very strong, just kind of black and white Christian and also not at all afraid of being hated. So he came and pushed me. Like he did what nobody else was brave enough to do and told me, Johanna, you said you believe this thing, but you're not talking like it and you're not acting like it. It's time for you to actually stand on what you believe and start saying those words aloud instead. So every time you want to tell somebody about this and you're tempted to say, I'm sick, I have all these things, like you can say whatever you want, but say it as the doctor said this, or like stop owning it. And you start talking like, I am healed, I'm going to be healed, I deserve to be healed. And he gave me this iPad with all of these scriptures about healing preloaded in it and said, this is tools for the battle and this is your time to fight. And every time I wanted to talk like I'm dying, I'm sick, I'm this, he's like, say your verses.
Yep. Wow.
And instead I just started saying like, I believe I am healed. Yep. I am these things. And like, you'll find every verse, every book, like a lot more people are starting to learn this in life, in business, in Christian or not. Like the whole ask and it is given book is amazing. It's older, but really good about just like what I learned, which is that your body believes what you tell it and that your mind can be changed. So your mind will either believe what your body tells it or will believe what you tell it, and you have the choice for those to be different. And so I was just going, well, I see this, I see these symptoms, I see these things, I accept it. But once I started saying, well, I tried everything, the doctors can't help me, but I'm not done. And I am not giving up. And I am going to try talking different and putting in different inputs. Like going from being at the office where everyone was negative to quitting my job and starting my own business and saying, I can do this, and starting to put in good inputs and business inputs encouraged me in my business. I did the same thing in my body and just started listening to anything about healing just to drown out the fear, because the fear itself would double my symptoms. And when I could drown out the fear and stop listening to it, even for a few minutes, I would get relief. And so I was like, first the fear's got to go. We got to focus on that. Or not focus on it. So I started doing that, started talking, and my symptoms started getting better and better and better and better. And by like a year in, I looked perfect. I was functioning perfect, but I kept going back to the doctor to get that certainty. And they'd do an MRI and it'd show that it was still there. And all of that faith would crumble. All of that belief that I'm better would crumble, because of course they're the doctor. So I have to take their word, and the MRI, it's right in front of me. I have to listen to this. And then all the symptoms would come back and it would repeat.
The power of the mind, isn't it crazy?
It is so strong. But finally, when that last doctor basically said, I'm not going to help you, and in fact, I'm not going to pay attention to your MRIs, I'm only going to do surgery on you if your symptoms are so bad that you're in a wheelchair or in a feeding tube. And I was like, hang on. So you don't care about the paper. You're just watching my symptoms. And I've been not trusting my symptoms as they improved because I thought I had to trust the paper. But if you're not either, we're both done with the paper. Like, I'm done going back for MRIs just to get the pants scared off of me every 6 months. And I haven't been back for an MRI in 5 or 6 years. And my body has just gotten better and better and better. And I realized how much of a gift it was that I learned that back in 2013, 2014. One, because it kind of kickstarted me into starting my own business. But two, learning that I need to do something about what I believe impacts me every day. And it impacts my clients, and it impacts how I walk them through their transformation. And as we're pulling out their X factor, we're pulling out what do they believe, and then helping them stand on it with their brand. And we're also saying, like, your reality today is not your final reality. And so what do you want it to be? Let's craft that. Let's design your life. Let's design your brand. And in the process, design your life. And then they see the new brand, and it's like holding up a future mirror. And they can suddenly see themselves for all that they can be, not just what they see in the mirror today. And the transformation is incredible, and it lasts for years. Like, I got a text message from a client that I had a few years ago, randomly yesterday, and she's like, I was in a training session with my coach, putting together my packages again, and they were asking these things, and I realized I had the answers because of the work we did on my brand 2 years ago and the questions that you asked me. And also, when you did my photos and my personal brand, I'd never seen myself in a good light before. And now I see it. I see what I can be. And that changed the trajectory of my business forever. So their brand goes so far beyond just a pretty shiny image to present to the world. It's like really finding their authenticity and showing that to the world.
Wow. Inspiring
so that was
story.
A really long answer.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't like this short inspirational story, but it couldn't be, because there was a 5+ year journey. Wow. It's It's impressive, the power of the mind and, just overcoming those self-limiting beliefs that we all have, but realizing, what you tell yourself matters. And that little voice in your head, it matters what's being said. And you have to take accountability for your thoughts because they become reality. And it's just so evident with that story. And it's evident with, branding as well and how it's interwoven. We, talked brain tumors and branding and everything in between. And it's impressive, Joe. I do want to.
I think that's.
Oh, go ahead. What?
The title of your episode. Is that the title of this episode?
Brain tumors and branding.
And everything in
there
between.
You go. That'll work. Joe, I do want to ask you the rapid fire round questions and, then we can wrap this up. But before I do, where can people go if they're like, listen, I want, Joe to take a look at my brand and I want to potentially hire her. Like this is some powerful stuff we're talking about. Where can people go to find out more about you?
Yeah. So first step for them would be to go to my website, which is designbyjoestudio.com. And they can request a free consult. We'll chat about their goals and their gaps and see what next steps would look like. Or if they just heard this and want to say hi and connect, they can also do that, or they can follow me on Instagram, Design by Joe Studio, or Facebook. And I would love to connect with them.
There you go, guys. And we'll link that up in the show notes. But you have designbyjoestudio.com. Check her out and check out those awesome pics on her website too. They definitely scream luxury. Now, Joe, I want to put you through the rapid fire round question. This is basically where I just ask random questions and you answer honestly. First thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
I think so. Sounds fun.
Favorite food? Go.
Cambodian Thai.
Ooh, favorite movie?
You're surprised. Probably The Avengers, the first one.
Favorite book?
It changes, but most recommended favorite is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero.
Best piece of business advice?
I have had like 10 great ones in my life, but I'm going to go back to the very first one that made my first pivot, which was, if you don't see what you want, write it down, design it, and create it.
Best piece of money advice? How to make more money? One line.
One line? Okay. Know your value and then charge what you're worth.
I was hoping you were going to go there. What's your spirit animal, Joe?
A white tiger.
Three things you're most grateful for. Oh, you can if you want.
No, I can't. You said one line.
It's rapid fire.
So hard.
It's rapid fire. Three things you're most grateful for.
I'm most grateful for the ability to find joy no matter what my circumstance. So it doesn't matter if life is uncertain. I have nothing to lose because you cannot take my joy. I am grateful for life and the fact that I still have it and the ability to move. And I take advantage of that every chance that I get. I'm so glad I can move again. And I am grateful for the really amazing, supportive people in my life who believed in me even before I believed in myself, and all of the amazing, supportive people I'm going to meet yet in my life.
Love it. And final rapid fire round question. If you had a billboard for the world to see with your last piece of content on it, what would that billboard read?
It would say, brand like the best, so you can be as delightfully expensive as you deserve to be.
Mic drop. Love it, Joe. You crushed that rapid fire round. And Joe, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you. Thank you for sharing your love, your light, your wisdom with the Happy Hustlers and myself, and, you know, your inspiring story and just a lot of the gold that was, littered throughout this interview, especially regarding your brand. I just want to say thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And I know you're insanely busy, but someday you have to tell me at least about how that mounted archery photo got on your website, because
yeah,
I'm so excited.
I know. So Joe does mounted archery for real, guys. I just do it for fun. But how it got on the website, well, I was just riding my horse and shooting my bow and arrow at the same time. That's how. But yeah, you do it like competition style, so that's pretty awesome. Now, Joe, I just want to open up the floor for any final words before I ask you the last question.
Okay. I would just pull in a couple of things that we already said, which is remember that even in a world of crazy uncertainty, you can choose joy, and then there's nothing left to fear. Like, if you can choose joy, no matter what's happening, there's nothing to be afraid of. And the world has so much fear right now, and I feel like joy is the antidote. So choose it. And then also, last business advice is that it doesn't matter what 99 voices are saying you cannot do. You only need one to remind you that you can. And bonus, that voice can be your own.
Love that, Joe.
But
those are great pieces of advice. Yeah, no, those are awesome. Did you have something else to add? Sorry.
I was just going to say, it doesn't have to be your own, though. There's always one amazing person ready to tell you what you're capable of. So
true.
You can get it either way.
So true. Now, last question. What does happy hustling mean to you, Joe?
To me, happy hustling means the ability to design your life and do all the things, which is like literally my favorite weekend activity, all the things. It means that you are intentional about what you do and the time you spend doing it, and you create freedom to stop and smell the roses, hang out with friends, ride your horse, like whatever thing it is that brings you joy, and hopefully what you do also brings you joy. But it's designing the time in so that you can still live it, so that you don't burn out, so that you're not on the long list of people clicking on the article of how to avoid burnout. Like, be intentional about it. Build it in.
Yep. Johanna White, everyone. Thanks so much for watching and listening. We are out. Peace and love.